2, 3.
Hello and welcome back to Mixing Music. I'm your host Dee Kei, and this week we have a very cool episode. We have my friend here, Leo Cashin, always cashing it in. How are you doing, Leo?
I'm good, Dee Kei. How are you?
Good. Hey, so today you have planned and prepared to basically give a lesson on background vocals, your opinions on it, how they should be treated, and what you do with them. Is that right?
Yeah, pretty much in rap and trap and hip hop. Yep, in that genre. That's what I was thinking.
Sweet. That's perfect. So let's talk about that, and let's jump right into it. Let's see, what's the first thing that you have on your list about Ad-Libs? About background vocals and Ad-Libs.
Yeah, cool. So I basically, when I'm recording, I'll record a lead, and that's always mono. And then we've got a dub, if not two, and then an ad-lib. And so what I do is...
So let's explain. Sorry, real fast. I don't mean to stop you, but let's explain. What is the difference between a dub and an ad-lib for our listeners?
So what I call
here?
a dub is like a double. So if someone lays down a verse, a dub would be them repeating the same words, either at the end of the phrase or repeating the whole verse, and then you layer that under the lead vocal so that it's a double or a dub.
Cool. And ad-libs are always something that's not doubled. It's something that's underneath, like the yeah, huh, right? As
typically,
well.
Yeah. And you can of course say the same word in an ad-lib, but it's definitely just what we label it in the industry. So I tend to make my background vocals stereo so that they move around my lead vocal in mono. And I do that initially by using EQ, like you would on any other track. And so if you have two different types of dubs, you don't want them sharing the same frequency ranges on your EQ. So what I like to do is I like to use the Ssl Channel Strip, and they've got some great presets on there. Two of my favorites are the background vocals.
Is this the UA channel strip, or is this the Waves channel strip?
This is the Waves SSL.
Okay,
sorry,
cool.
I needed to clarify.
No,
Yep.
no worries. Good thing I asked.
Yep, but I think they all have the same presets, do they not?
I think within the companies they do. I don't think I don't know if
Audio
UA
is
has the
from
same.
Waves. Yeah.
And I don't know if Brainworks will have the same.
Yeah,
but,
sorry about that.
No worries.
So I'm wondering, do you use the Waves or do you use the?
I definitely use a lot of that Waves one. I don't really use the UAD one. But let's talk about the preset and then what they usually entail. Like, what is it that's kind of happening?
Yeah, cool. So in the backing Vox preset, you've got, just from bottom to top, you've got in relation to the Townsend Olympic vocals that I also use for a second pair of dubs. On the backing Vox, you've got a -3 decibel cut at 350, and you've just got a bigger cut on the Olympic vocals at 6 decibels. But as you go up, you've got a +3 decibel shift at 850 hertz on the backing Vox, and you've got a -3 dip at 1K. So that's pretty much an opposite effect. So those two are going to be in the low frequencies affecting each other differently. So you're going to hear them differently.
Absolutely. So you're saying that you like to treat background vocals and ad-libs darker than the lead vocal, which is more bright.
Well, actually, I'm saying between two different dubs, I'm treating the two different dubs differently.
Oh,
so they
you're treating the dubs differently. I'm sorry, I heard that wrong. Okay, cool. That's interesting.
Yeah. So I'm treating all the background vocals separately than the lead, so that because I'm keeping my lead mono, and that these are going to become stereo, so I'm affecting these around my lead vocal differently.
So even though it's two separate takes of dubs, whatever, on the outsides, you still treat them differently. So the dub on the left side is still going to be different from the dub on the right side.
Sure, and I'm not necessarily panning just left and right, but yes, those two different dubs are going to have different EQs completely.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yep, so that's why I'm using these two different presets, because they're basically opposite.
And now, how would you describe how that feels in a mix when you make them different EQs versus if they were the same EQ?
To me, they just sit behind that lead vocal a little bit differently. If I stack the same EQ on top of itself, it's just going to get a little bit muddy, especially if they're both dubs. So my example would be, the first dub would be, he raps the entire verse exactly like he did on his lead vocal, and then he wants that as a stack underneath his main. And then his second pair of dubs is just the last word of every phrase, right? So that's another dub. So those two is what I'm affecting differently. And then even then, the ad-lib that comes in, I'm going to give that a completely different EQ from the other two as well, so it has its own space. Yeah, so what you could do on the Ad-Lib is you could like do a phone filter. So that's basically just like a hardcore EQ, right? But it's still
Yeah, that's
just
pretty
another
common.
EQ trick. Right, so you just make the Ad-Libs in the phone filter. Now you've got 3 different EQs all affecting those backgrounds differently, but they each have their own space.
Nice, yeah. And now I have a question with dubs. What I like to do is I like to have the lead thing and maybe one other dub, right? And or not just on dub. Let's say I'm just having everything doubled on a verse, right? Or on a chorus, I just want it to have that doubled, that Michael Jackson sort of thing. Do you spread them out at all, or do you still keep them both in the center if you ever do doubles with just?
Yeah, so the second, and this is something that I was gonna plug for Sound Toys, kind of, but Sound Toys has great plugins, and they have 2 called Micro Shift and Little Micro Shift. And if you don't use these, that's a great one to put on the dub. It basically just, I mean, you can keep it mono, but it makes it basically stereo, and it has a dry and wet knob, 3 different presets. And it really just spreads out a dub beautifully.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that guy. And I think Sound Toys, if you're interested, they're having they usually do a big Black Friday sale. And as we coming up into November, keep an eye out if you don't have all the Sound Toys plugins, because we love that stuff.
Yep, Decapitator is a go-to. Those are great plugins.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's the next thing?
Okay, so Ad-Libs, like I was said a little bit differently. Again, I typically do on each channel Autotune and SSL with a different EQ, and then one of these micro shifts or little micro shift plugins. You can use. Another go-to is Greg Wells. He makes a great in Waves his voice centric plugins.
Yeah, do you like to use that?
Yeah, those are really cool. It's just one big knob. It's got 3 different side sets of delay, reverb, and a doubler. It's really cool, easy plugin. But on my Ad-Libs, what I'll do is I'll add deverb or any reverb directly to it, and then just affect the dry wet knob so that it has its own reverb, just the Ad-Lib. So, the Travis Scott, yeah, whoa, blah, whoa, whatever he's saying in the background, so that those have a long tail on their own, but they don't have to go to the main reverb. You just put reverb directly on the track. That's another little trick of mine.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. And I have to ask you, you said, I don't know if we talked about Autotune yet, you just kind of mentioned it. I actually also really like to use Autotune, especially on like harmonies or like Ad-Libs, just because I feel like anything that's in the background just has to be extra tight, especially if it's like R&B where it's like there's a pitch. Any harmonies, any Ad-Libs just has to be super tight for me. So that I love Autotune on, and not like necessarily a robotic Autotune, but something that really makes it fit in the tonal pocket.
Right. No, absolutely. I do the same thing. I have Autotune on every channel. Typically, lately, I've been using Autotune Efx. I think I texted you about this the other day.
Yeah, you were. Tell me about Efx. Tell us about Efx. What's the difference?
It's just a little smoother. I don't know what the algorithm is or how it's different, but you sync it to the BPM just like Autotune, and you just set it and go. It's just different. It's different. There's a reason they made a second one, but I don't know how to explain it besides that it's smoother, and you don't hear the shifts as much between keys. It's just kind of like instead of taking a staircase, it's like rolling down a hill.
Really? That's interesting. I've never actually used that. I only have the 2 that UAD offers, the original one with the white interface and the new Pro version that UAD has with the darker interface. But those are the only 2 that I've ever used. I actually don't have the Autotune directly from Antares.
And that's just Autotune Pro, right? Real-time advanced. Yeah.
Yeah. So
right,
that's kind of what I use. I need to look up EFX, so that's a really cool idea.
It's a great plugin. Have you not seen those Instagram ads? Man, they blow me up on Instagram.
Yeah, no, I haven't. Dude, I'm trying to get Henrik on. Henrik is our friend that we also met with at Mix with the Masters. He's one of the sales and customer support or something for Antares, and I'm trying to get him on an episode as well, talking about Autotune and all the different products that Antares has to offer.
And man, he was trying to show us in class how to use it like Melodyne, and I still go to Melodyne. I can't do it.
Definitely.
I
But
tried
there's
it.
a lot of cool stuff. There's a lot of cool stuff that you can do with there.
No, it can absolutely do a lot.
Yeah, man. So what's next on your list? We're gonna keep going down. I know that you
Yes.
prepared for this.
Yeah, man. I just wanted to share a couple tips. I love learning on YouTube and through podcasts. So yeah. So another Sound Toys plug is Little Altar Boy. So,
Oh, dude, the baby, dude. I love Little Altar Boy.
Yeah, of course. And so for a while I was using Little Altar Boy, but I could never figure out, like, on those pop tunes, how to get the delay while it's being pitched down to be in perfect time. So I used to cut the audio, drag it down to a channel with Little Altar Boy on it, and drag it over, but it just didn't work. So now I'm just putting it right on my quarter delay send, and right after my quarter delay, and it's just pitching it immediately like it would in a send, and it's just much better. And then you can even sidechain it if you if you want to go deep.
So you pitch the delay.
So I pitch the delay these days, and that's how I'm getting a
dope.
perfect delayed pitch. It's really cool. You make it deep, and put it on some girl singing a pop song. It's like, psh, done. We got a pop song.
That is dope. So you're
Yeah.
saying that your chain is delay then Altar Boy, or are you saying that it's Altar Boy then delay on the send aux?
That's a good question. I think I
Doesn't
put it
matter.
after-
Then if
I think I put it after, but I don't know if that. Yeah, I think I put it
yeah,
after.
I guess
though,
it
but
doesn't
yeah.
matter. Who gives a crap? It doesn't matter. That's dope. That's cool. I've never actually thought about doing that.
Yeah. So I'm curious. Do you affect background vocals a little differently than I do? Are you taking a different approach that I should maybe be looking into?
No, I don't know if I do them super differently. I mean, I think the specifics are going to be different, but in general, the philosophy are the same. For me, Ad-Libs and background vocals tend to be darker. I make them dark, especially if it's going to be on top of the lead vocal, because I feel like any like Ad-Libs or dubs that are at the same time as the vocals, like, it doesn't work very well. So I first off try to help the artist and produce the artist so they're kind of doing it in between the pockets, the Ad-Libs at least, in between the pockets of when they're not, like during the breaks. So it's like not competing. But in general, I like to have dubs slightly darker, unless I'm literally just doing a double, like literally just a double, where then I make them do the same take twice, and I treat them both as leads, and then I spread them out just a little bit, just a tiny bit. Because the problem is if you do a double track, then so like you're doubling the entire phrase or the entire chorus, not just like specific words you want to emphasize like a dub. But if you're doubling like an entire, like a chorus per se, I treat them exactly the same, and I spread them out maybe like 35 left and 35 right instead of 100 left and 100 right, just to give them a little bit of space, because if it's also 0 and 0, it also sounds a little bit phasey sometimes, a little bit weird. And honestly, it kind of like, it's not as interesting, but at the same time, I feel like when things are really spread apart and someone's listening on headphones, it makes the
It's
experience
distracting.
way different than if you were
Yeah.
listening on speakers. So
Yeah.
I do like to have just a little bit, so it's kind of maintain the fidelity of the audio, but at the same time, still kind of spread it out a little bit. Now with dubs, I do like to make them darker, and usually with a little bit more reverb or delay.
And
with
by darker,
Ad-Libs,
are you just rolling off the high end, or
no,
how
I'm
are you
not.
making it darker?
Sometimes I'm rolling off, but most of the time I think I'm just not adding as much high end. Because like with the lead vocal, I love to make that thing bright and sharp, right? And like maybe even boost some like upper mid range EQ, and then a lot of high end, and like definitely a lot of that like top way like past 20K kind of thing, right? Like really like to make it pop. But with the Ad-Libs, I'm not focusing much on the high end. I'm just trying to make it clear. So I'm taking out the low end and the low mids, like the muddy stuff, just like I would. But I'm just not adding and enhancing the high end as much. So I'm not necessarily filtering it out, but that's just kind of the way that I like it. So again, the whole point of the dub or an Ad-Lib is to be supportive of the lead. So I'm just still trying to make the lead be brighter so it's up front, and then the background be a little bit darker so it's a little bit more in the background. But that's kind of like my general thing. But yeah, sometimes I put in filters, sometimes I make them brighter, sometimes I make them darker. But my general philosophy, the way that I like hearing it, the way that I hear Ad-Libs and dubs, is just darker.
Are you sending your backgrounds or your dubs to a different bus than your main?
Yeah, typically I do send it to a different reverb. or I add extra reverbs, or I layer reverbs or layer delays or whatnot, so it's like slightly different. Yeah, but I don't. I typically don't use the same effects as the lead by itself. I like at least blend the same effects with something else.
Right, but so your signal chain, like you're sending your vocals to a Vox bus, right?
Yeah, and that's what you mean. No, yeah, I don't send my Ad-Libs to
That
the
same
Vox
bus.
Yeah,
Okay.
I usually keep a separate, partially because I don't want the Ad-Libs to affect the compressor that's going on in the Vox bus for my lead. And
Yep.
partially because I do actually, like, again, I do like them slightly darker. I do like them loud. Like, I like them a little bit louder, like not at the same level as the lead, but I don't think that they should be in the background in the sense that I don't think that they should be super quiet. I think they should be loud, but if they're darker, then they can be louder and kind of almost a little bit less than the lead volume, but it's still separate. It still feels like a background thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, cool.
If that makes sense. So I mean, like, with your background in dubs, what is your philosophy as far as like when you're like, because you record a lot as well, right?
Oh, yeah, I track a lot.
Yeah. So I mean, when you help out with artists, what kind of tips do you give them when they're trying to like do ad-libs and tips? Like, do you have any like production? Like, do you like, how about like the production side of stuff? Do you help artists with that before they start recording?
Yeah, it's typically as we go. If they ask me to help, then I will, but I won't just jump in and be like, hey, yo, you should put this here. I typically won't do that unless, it's just an effectual kind of thing that I want them to add. I let them go. Some people are different. Some people like want to be coached when they're in the booth, They're like, yo, please tell me, if that sounded good or if that sounded bad, or tell me where to put these dubs or where to put these ad-libs, or like give me some ideas for sounds. And I'll sit back here and be like, pew pew pew. I'll give them ideas all day. I'll make sound effects all day for you, and then they'll go lay it down. But then you move up to some artists who know what they're doing. And it's just like one take, boom, second take, second dub, boom, third take, ad-lib, boom, and they come in and it's 4 takes done, and it's like, okay, perfect.
Dude, I've had a couple artists where they like have been doing ad-libs and dubs for a long time.
And
I think this is actually, dude, I'm not kidding. Like, ad-libs, when you know what you're doing and you're a lot more comfortable with it, it like is a total game changer to the vibe of a track.
It really is. I had someone rhyming their ad-libs the other day. So like their verse was rhyming, like of course it should, and then like they were saying different words that didn't rhyme with the verse, but they rhymed together in the ad-libs, and it was wild. That was cool.
Really? That's kind of neat. I've never heard that.
I know. I was like, what are you doing in there? That's cool.
Dude, one of the best ad-libs that I've ever like been a part of, like produced and recorded. There's this guy. I've never seen him. I've only seen him once in my life. Came into the studio. He was like a friend of one of the artists. And dude, I would definitely, if I knew who this guy was, I should have taken his information, because he was like the singer ad-lib. So he's like singing. He's like riffing in the background.
Nice, yeah.
And I have never heard ad-libs, like singing type ad-libs, be so good in one take.
That's awesome.
And to this day, even the stuff like on Rap Caviar or like anything like R&B tracks, I'm still like, that guy was definitely the best. Like, I'm pretty sure it was a dream. Like, I don't know.
Hey, that's
this
awesome.
guy was so killer. And that just totally made the track for me. I need to go back into my old hard drives and like listen through all the old artists I recorded, because I have no clue who it was, but that literally, like, that ad-lib made the track.
Well, and
right?
that's the little stuff that makes this job, like you just get that one day and you're like, this is cool and different and I love it.
Yeah, no, it's really cool. It's really cool. So let me ask you, with your background and stuff, with the background vocals and the harmonies and whatnot, do you treat them differently for different genres? Because I know we're talking about like hip hop and trap, but like, have you like, what about like R&B or just like a pop song? Do you still treat them the same way, philosophically speaking?
It depends, because like on trap stuff, you can get away with using some crazier effects, or more dramatic effects, I should say. Whereas no, if I'm recording like a ballad pop song, even if I just throw that micro shift on her background, it might even just be too much. 10% on that wet dry knob at most type of deal. So no, I affect it differently. I definitely do a lot less for other genres for sure. But typically I'm doing 95% trap and rap.
Yeah. That's sweet. So I think that we should, one of the big points that I try to make and have this be part of a main theme for the podcast is that there is literally no right answers. There's no correct way to do things,
Exactly.
Which is why I call it like a philosophy, because you and I, we might do it just slightly differently, but the ideas are basically the same, right? We want it to sound good. We want it to affect the vocal. We want it to add to the vibe. But the philosophies might be slightly different, and it doesn't matter. It does not matter. Like your stuff sounds great, and I've heard it. Mine stuff you can say sounds great.
Sounds
and
great.
It does. Thanks. I just didn't want to say it myself.
it does for sure.
But I think that the point is that there's no right answer, and
right.
Sometimes you just got to do it and mess with it. And sometimes the weird stuff, like doing something totally weird and crazy, is what sounds awesome, And those are like the golden nuggets as us for engineers, where it's just like, oh, that was really cool, And sometimes it doesn't work at all, but
yeah. And one thing I remember from France is that Leslie didn't use a template, remember? And I'm always using a template. But the other day I decided not to, and I was pretty, I was happy I did, but I remember how much you just start relying on a template, how it's just kind of like, it's easy when you're getting mixes in and you're trying to turn, 2 or 3 to not drag it into a template. Like, why wouldn't you? But you actually, for me personally, I should say, I listen way more intently when I don't use one. And not exactly sure my point to that, but with all this micro shift, all this stuff that I'm using on these background vocals, there's so many different ways to do this. Like, you don't have to do it this way. I don't have to do it the way my template does it every time, and sometimes I don't, and sometimes it sounds better. So
absolutely.
It's just how I'm doing it right now, and it's working for right now, but it probably will change.
Yeah, and we could talk about templates as another topic, because I'm also one of those that never has used a template.
Oh, really?
And probably never will. Like, I'm all about efficiency, but for some reason I've just never really cared about building a template, because I'm also, at the same time, I also spend a lot of time with quick keys and like the new functions every time Pro Tools update, like the new quick stuff.
And
like
you got the search
auxes
now
real fast. Yeah, and you got the search now, and like you can like move stuff to the top of the list, stuff like that. And I just don't. I've never had a reason to, and I never have. I've never made it a point to make a template. That being said, now I probably will make a point to not use templates.
Are you using a similar chain on your buses to what we learned in France?
Oh yeah, similar, but
so you don't have those just like disabled and pulled up, but bypassed, just so you could unbypass and go?
Dude. No, because usually the order is going to be different, or I'm going to want a different compressor. Because one thing, because I've never used templates, I'm really comfortable with a very large scale of compressors. And, EQs I don't think matters as much, but like there's slower compressors, and there's like just compressors that add a little bit more distortion, and for some reason this compressor, like the LA2A from Universal Audio, the silver version is faster, and it, for some reason, makes the audio slightly brighter, in my opinion. I don't know what it is, right?
Interesting.
So it's like
these
things, so it's like I kind of like, so for example, like Leslie will always use the R compressor, but I don't like to have a template, and I should have like one of those like autofill things where you can click a button and it autofills, but I still probably wouldn't use a template. I probably would still autofill plugin where you can make your chain. That's probably what I'd do before I'd make a template though. But I do like to have those minor changes, that I'm not saying is like the rule of my book, but I just like to have that freedom, because I don't know what it is. And that's just my personality, and that's not right or wrong or anything like that. But anyway.
Right.
So we should definitely do another topic some other time. But thank you so much, Leo, for joining us for this episode of Mixing Music. Where can people hit you up? Let's do a little shout out for you. How can people find you? Do you have an Instagram? Do you have a website? Like what? How can people hit you up?
Nice. Yeah. My Instagram is at Leo Cashin. My beats are at Cashin Beats 303. I work at Augmentish Studio here in Littleton, Colorado, which is right outside of Denver, Colorado. And yeah, you can also email me at leo.augmentishedstudio@gmail.com. And any other way
That's dope.
is fine too. Thank you for everything, DK. I appreciate you having me on.
No worries, Leo. Thank you for joining us. And please remember, if you like what we're doing, please leave a 5-star review, share with your friends. Remember, the deal is, feel free to email me an MP3 at dkmixes@gmail.com, and I would love to give feedback on mixes, and I definitely don't charge for that. That's always my deal. You can always send me something that you'd like some feedback on. And I actually got a few more emails this week. And I just love, that's like one of the ways that I could provide value for you guys. I also have a Facebook group that you can join and help each other out with. Just search Mixing Music Podcast on Facebook, and you'll see a group for the Mixing Music Podcast group. Anyway, hit you up next time. Keep listening, keep working hard, and stay saucy.
1, 2, 3.
This episode of Mixing Music with Dee Kei has been brought to you by LaunchPod Media. If you want to start a podcast, make sure to start it right with LaunchPod Media.